Today, we're going to go over 5 things you need to record drums at home in 2025. If you don't know me, my name is Tim Buell. I'm a drummer living in Nashville, Tennessee. We're in my studio and I record drums for producers and artists all over the world from here. But I didn't start here, and I know firsthand that beginning recording, trying to figure out what gear you need and how to route it all and how to get it all together and how to get sounds and how to mix it and all that stuff, it can be really overwhelming. So I'm making this video to hopefully help some of you avoid the confusion and give you several options, whether it's you're just starting out or you're looking to get a professional setup so that you can maybe charge people for your drums and things like that. So the first thing you need to record is an interface. And before an interface, technically you need a computer. And most computers these days can really handle it. Personally, I've used PC and Mac. I prefer Mac for audio tasks like recording, but you can use either platform. And once you have a computer, there's a bunch of free and paid for recording software, GarageBand, Logic, Pro Tools, Ableton, Studio One. They're all options. I have videos on the channel that compare between the DAWs. But once you have a computer and recording software, the next thing you're going to need is an interface, because now that you have your computer and your recording software, you need to get the microphones into the computer somehow. And the way we do that is an interface. Now, interfaces come in all shapes and sizes, and it's going to be really tempting at first to just buy a 2-input interface and kind of call it a day. And even if you're starting recording with just 1 or 2 mics, which I do recommend, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but even if you do want to start out with just a few mics, I really recommend to future-proof your setup a little bit, because drums, you need a lot of mics. I have like 20 mics on my drum kit a lot of the times. It's a lot of mics. You don't have to start there, but I would future-proof your setup by getting an interface that has 8 inputs right out the gate if you can afford it. The Focusrite 18i20 is great. It has 8 inputs, and then if you want to expand your setup even more and add more channels, it has ADAT expansion, and you can expand with something like the Audient ASP880, which gets you 8 or more channels, really nice preamps. All of them have phase and high pass filters and all this stuff. I actually have one of those here in my studio. They're great, but I would start with 8 input interface. Focusrite 18i20 is great. There'll be links in the description of all the stuff I talk about that takes you to Sweetwater, and you can use those links to check out whatever I talk about. And the second thing you'll need to record drums is microphones. And a lot of people with drums are tempted to go out and buy 8 different mics and throw them all up. But I recommend, if you're really starting out just recording, just get 1 or 2 mics. Experiment with those and try to get a good drum sound like that. Yes, if you're going to try to charge people for recording drums on their products and you want to, do the remote recording thing, there is kind of an industry standard of the certain inputs that engineers and producers might expect. So if you're trying to charge people to, put drums on projects, this might not be the best advice. But I think if you haven't ever recorded at all, start out with just 2 microphones or 1 mic. I have a video on my channel that walks you through recording with 1 microphone. It's pretty old. Probably wouldn't agree with everything that I say in there because I've learned a lot as a drummer and an engineer, but starting out with fewer mics is really good. And that's because a lot of people really lean on having a bunch of mics. If they want more cymbals, they turn up the overheads. If they want more snare drum, they turn up the snare mic. When in reality, what you should do when you first start recording, no matter how many microphones you have, is really focus on playing your kit balanced dynamically, making sure that you're not hitting cymbals too hard, making sure that the kick and snare are moving an equal amount of weight in the groove, and you're going to want to make sure that your drums are tuned for however you want the song to sound at the end of it. So many people rely on this EQ or this plugin or this mic is going to give me the sound that I want. And it really isn't. It really is about you taking care to make sure the drums are tuned and that you're hitting the drums in a way that sounds like the final product you want. And that way, no matter what microphone, no matter how many mics you have, no matter what's capturing your performance, it's going to sound more like that finished product. But if you want to have more mics, I'll throw up on screen here some of the mics that I like to use and what I like to use them on. It's not an exhaustive list of every mic I own, but it is like a lot of the mics that I point people to kind of get a start. So I'll throw that up on screen. You can pause the video and take a screenshot of it if you want. And the other thing I'd say about microphones is really make sure, especially when you're using fewer mics, but even when you have a lot of mics, really try to move the mics around and experiment with their placement. Sometimes moving a mic an inch or 2 can really make a big difference. Third thing that you need to record drums at home is room treatment. Having a treated room is really important. For drums, overheads and room mics are a huge part of the sound. As people that listen to music, as people that listen to drums, we have never really heard a drum from 1 inch away. So all these close mics on the drums, they help accomplish, making sure that the drums have low end impact and things like that. But it's in the overheads, it's in the room mics that really define how the drums sound in a room. And if you're in a poorly treated room, it's just going to make everything you record in there unpleasant. Now, this could be a whole video on itself, so I'm going to keep this short. But in general, with room treatment, you're trying to take care of parallel surfaces. And what I don't recommend is going out and buying those kind of square foam pad things that you see, for cheap on Amazon, because they don't do anything. Absorption is all about thick material that really absorbs sound. And those panels are so thin and the material they have are so porous, they don't really do much. So I recommend people build panels like the panels that I have in my studio here. And it's way easier to do than you think. If you have, a circular saw and a drill, you can build them yourself. It's not as intimidating or hard as possible. And I actually have a full video on the YouTube channel all about how to build acoustic panels. And I do it for under $50 or something, I think. So if you're trying to treat your room, I would really go the route of building your own panels. It's not as scary as you think. And it gives you the opportunity to kind of treat your room in phases. You don't have to spend all this money at once. You can build a couple, put them in your room, see how it impacts the sound, build a couple more, move them around, experiment, see how it sounds. And if you need to build more, you can build more. The fourth thing that you need to record drums are studio monitors, or some way to listen back and mix whatever you record. And even if you aren't a mixing engineer, I think it's really important to have an accurate way to hear what you're recording, because whoever you're sending these tracks to, whether it's a producer or a mix engineer, the goal is to make their lives easier. My goal as a drummer who's, usually playing on someone's project and someone else is mixing it before it goes out and gets mastered and goes on Spotify or whatever, my goal isn't to fully mix the drums, but I want to get those drums as close as I can to the finished product, because that just makes everybody's life easier. And it also ensures that my vision for whatever the song is gets kind of imprinted on the drums. So having a great pair of studio monitors that you can mix stuff on, that you can listen back on, that you can, have clients over and show them mixes or show them what you're recording when they're in the studio with you. It's really important to have some studio monitors that are, nice to listen to. And this is a good time to talk about the sponsor of today's episode, Sweetwater. Recently, I upgraded my studio monitors with the help of Sweetwater and Focal, and I upgraded to the Focal Alpha 80 Evos, which sound incredible. They're speakers that each have an 8-inch woofer and a 1-inch tweeter, and I've been really blown away by these speakers, and I truly wish that I had upgraded sooner. These speakers have an incredible amount of low end. I can hear low end that I couldn't before with my old speakers, and that's without a subwoofer, which is really important because when you introduce a subwoofer, then it increases your chance of phase and all this weird stuff, and then monitoring is hard and all this stuff. And these speakers, they sound incredible. I'm hearing stuff in the low end that I never heard. I'm also hearing clarity in the mid-range and the high mids that I just never really heard before. I'm hearing certain buzzes and noises that I can take care of before I send tracks to people that I just wasn't hearing before because my monitors weren't good enough. I also love that these monitors have an auto standby mode. That means that I don't have to worry about turning them on and off. I can just leave them on all the time, and after they don't have audio passing through them for 15 minutes, they go into standby mode, which is really helpful. Each speaker also has a high and low shelf, so you can kind of set these speakers up and tune them for your room. So there's a link in the description to go check out the Focal Alpha 80 Evos. I love them, so you can go to that link. It'll take you over to Sweetwater, and at no extra cost to you if you buy anything from Sweetwater using those links. I get a small kickback, which really helps me support the channel. So that's my current studio monitor situation. I really love them, and thanks again to Sweetwater and Focal for sending these over. So maybe you're in a place where you haven't treated your room and studio monitors are out of your price range, then I really recommend getting a good pair of headphones that you can get some clarity. Spend a little extra money, $150, $200 on a nice pair of headphones that can at least get you in the door of hearing stuff. It's going to be way better than, Apple AirPods or something like that. And then the last thing that I recommend with studio monitoring is having several ways you can reference your mix. In my studio, I have my nice Focal monitors, but I also have some really, really, really bad computer speakers. I also have a little iPhone mono speaker that I listen through. Then I also have a pair of old Apple headphones that I listen through. It really, really helps, especially if you're new to something, to reference your mix on several different kind of situations. And the fifth and final thing that you need to record drums in 2025 are plugins. Every DAW has plugins, and most of them are pretty good, but I really recommend, if you're going to get into this, to kind of find some plugins that you can use kind of like a channel strip. The way I think of it is, I don't want every plugin in the world because there are a billion plugins. But what I want are a few small suite of plugins that kind of give me everything that I need. And if you have that in your DAW, that's great. But if you're trying to branch out, two other things that you can think about are the plugins that you're buying subscription-based. I really, really recommend to watch out for these subscription-based plugins. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use them, but what I'm saying is, think when you're, when you see a price tag of, oh, it's on sale for $25. there's a subscription with it, or if there's an upgrade subscription thing that they have you pulled into, just know that, yeah, you're paying $25 now, but you might be paying $25 several times over the next couple of years. So, $25 today, but over the course of 6 years, if it's a subscription, or if you need to upgrade that plugin every time there's an operating system update or something like that, it's kind of annoying and something that you need to think about. Another thing you want to look at when you're getting into plugins is latency. There are some really, really great plugins that I love that sound incredible, but take up a lot of CPU. And when you have a lot of CPU draw from a plugin, that means that you can't monitor it live when you're recording. And it also means that, if you have a bunch of instances of that in your session, it's just going to slow things down. It's going to bog stuff down, and it's not really what you want. So personally for me, I really think that FabFilter is doing incredible work with their plugins. And I think that, for the bang for the buck, they're kind of where I go to first and where I recommend people start. And that's because they're not a subscription. They're a one-time fee. They work on Mac or PC. A lot of them are zero latency, like Pro Q3, Saturn II, R2 Reverb plugin. All of those are zero latency, which means if you're in the middle of a session and maybe you have a guitar player over and you want to simulate some amp, you can put on Saturn II, dial in an amp sound, and it's non-destructive, and it gives something for the guitar player to hear. There's no latency. Same with the EQ, same with the reverb. I think that that's really, really important, because as you get into recording, as you record more, it's really important to be able to hear, kind of whatever processing you want, whether it's compression or EQ or whatever. It's really important to be able to play while you hear that stuff. I think a lot of people, I know I did when I first started recording, I didn't monitor with any of that stuff. I could just kind of hear the drums, kind of hear the track, and I played. But when you can hear the specific compression or distortion that you're going for with a certain weird little mic you have or whatever, it really changes the way that you hit the drums. And I think that getting plugins that are zero latency, that's where, I really suggest people start. So that's it. Those are 5 things that you need to record drums in 2025. If you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the comments below. And remember, there's links to the Focal monitors and everything else that I mentioned down in the description. Those will take you over to Sweetwater. Thanks again to Sweetwater for sponsoring this video. If you liked it, you can go ahead, give it a thumbs up, give it a like, do all that stuff. And again, put your questions in the comments. If you have questions about anything I mentioned here or anything else, please put those in the comments. I'd love to answer them. I'd love to hear from you all. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next one.